Cuba. This island country between the Atlantic Ocean and Caribbean Sea has a population of approximately 11 million and holds a lot of culture and history within its 110,860-kilometer area. This country has a flat terrain and is abundant in natural resources such as cobalt and nickel. Furthermore, Cuba has a tropical climate, and with the way the weather in Gainesville is right now, I sure wish it was more like Cuba. It has a rainy season from May to October and a dry season from November to April. Cuba is the largest country in the Caribbean and is similar in size to the state of Pennsylvania in the United States. There are large population clusters throughout the country, with people mostly residing in urban areas. The largest city in Cuba is their capital, Havana, with about 2,140,423 people calling it home. So a pretty large chunk of their population of 11 million. Their population has a level of diversity to it, with 65.1% being white, 24.8% being mulatto or mestizo, and 10.1% being of African descent. This diversity is due to the history of the country. The native peoples of Cuba are the Taínos, who lived on the island without interruption until 1492, when Christopher Columbus sailed to Cuba, bringing about the colonization of the island by Europeans. With that, the Europeans brought many slaves to the country in order to work on the numerous sugar plantations that the island offers. As the natives, Europeans, and Africans had children with each other, the mulatto and mestizo, which are the mixed populations, rose greatly. In 1898, the Spanish-American War gave Cuba the opportunity to gain independence from the country of Spain, and the Treaty of Paris was signed in order to make this official. And, in 1902, Cuba finally became an independent country, as it was released from U.S. military rule. However, the country's history is full of corrupt rulers. Fidel Castro led a military takeover of Cuba in 1958 and took power, making Cuba a country of tyranny. In 2008, he handed power over to his brother, Raul Castro, who, in 2018, handed power over to Miguel Diaz-Canel, who is the current president of the country. Cuba is a country that has experienced vast economic difficulties throughout its history, much of them being due to other countries. The Cuban government used strict socialist measures on the economy in order to gain control over the citizens. The Cuban Communist Party, Congress, did meet in 2011 in order to talk about loosening these restrictions, but there's still a lot of work for the country to do. In 1958, the United States, under President John F. Kennedy, placed an embargo on Cuba. They basically placed an ultimatum on other countries, saying you could either trade with us or with Cuba. The other countries chose the United States as an obvious choice because they had a much stronger economy and would benefit their country to a greater extent. To this day, many Cubans consistently portray the U.S. embargo as a source of their economic difficulties. Kennedy imposed this embargo because he was against Castro's regime and what it was doing to the citizens, and he did not want the United States, or any other country for that matter, to economically associate with Cuba. Due to this embargo, Cuba has accumulated over $144 billion in debt. In addition to leaving Cuba in a financial deficit, the country also has a shortage of necessary goods, such as medical drugs, and many people in the country have suffered greatly. This comic shows Uncle Sam, an iconic American symbol, blocking the country of Cuba and enveloping it with his arms, so that no other countries, represented by the boat, could get to it. This shows that even though the other countries want to trade with Cuba, the United States will not allow it. And the country would be better off economically if it associated with the United States over if it associated with Cuba. The United States still has not lifted this embargo, and it is uncertain what political leaders will do about this in the future. For a long time, Cuba depended on the Soviet Union to provide them with money and resources. In fact, the Soviet Union paid off about 90% of the country's debt, which amounts to approximately $35 billion. Furthermore, Cuba depended on the USSR heavily for the well being of their agricultural sector. They were provided with everything from the crops they grew, to the tractors and other motorized equipment they used, to the gasoline they used to fuel the equipment. However, in the year of 1991, the Soviet Union fell, which was devastating for the Cuban economy. Cuba had a severe economic downturn following the withdrawal of former Soviet subsidies worth approximately $4 to $6 billion every single year. People were starving, as the agricultural sector of the country had disintegrated. However, Cuba eventually overcame this problem when it developed urban agriculture. Since 77.2% of the Cuban population lives in urban areas, they grew crops in the cities where most of the people were. Next to skyscrapers, on rooftops, in windowsills, you name it, they were growing food there. It took a while, but now the country offers similar amounts of food to developed parts of the world, such as the United Kingdom. The only difference is that they do not use synthetic fertilizers, and all their food is organic, nutritious, and delicious. Although Cuba has made several advances, the country is still suffering greatly due to these economic difficulties. When Castro took rule of Cuba, he made it a communist state. And although this sounds great in theory, and there were some great reforms that he brought about, for example, he brought the country's literacy rate up to 99.8%. Overall, this had a negative impact on the country. Communism in Cuba ensured that all citizens were treated equally, but in this case, equally does not equal humanely. The low pay for people of all professions made the quality of life for all, except government officials, very
My
low.
parents left Cuba whenever I was an infant, and my dad was a doctor in Cuba, and just like to put in perspective the economic struggle, so he was a doctor, he was an OBGYN, and he was making around $20 a month. And it was, the thing with communism is that there's like this limit on how much you can do. And so what you see now, I feel like, is you see these young people who don't want to become doctors or lawyers or professionals because you can be making more money as a farmer or as anyone, just like selling stuff on the streets to tourists, than someone who like put in all this work to study and who is not respected by the government. And there's a lot of injustices in that like government officials will be living wealthy lives, but the people don't have any resources. And so I think that a lot of people leave Cuba just looking for better opportunities, and a lot of them are willing to work. So you see a lot of people who travel to either South America or Spain or even the United States looking for better opportunities.
The economic struggles that Cuba faced have caused a lot of people to emigrate from the country. So much so that their net migration rate is approximately negative 3.7 migrants per 1,000 of the Cuban population. From 1980 to the present, the population of Cubans in the United States has more than doubled. Most Cubans that emigrate the country find themselves in the state of Florida in the United States, primarily in urban areas. This picture depicts Little Havana, a section of Miami that is full of Cuban immigrants, their offspring, and their vibrant culture. The distance factor is what has the most influence on Cubans choosing Florida as their new home, as Key West, Florida is exactly 90 miles from the island of Cuba. The wet foot, dry foot policy was enacted in the year 1966, but was not given this name until 1995, under a revision of the Cuban Adjustment Act. This act states that Cubans that emigrate to the United States are given citizenship if they successfully make it to land, American soil, therefore having dry feet. However, if they are caught while still in the water, therefore having wet feet, they will be deported back to Cuba. This policy was the center of many hopes for the Cuban population, until it was ended in 2017, and all Cubans, regardless if they have wet feet or dry feet, had to go through the long legal immigration process. Cuba is a country that has undergone many struggles, from economic hardships to political corruption. Even though there has been improvement, such as the termination of the Castro administration, there is still a long way for this country to go before they provide their citizens with the liberties they deserve. An example of this is the ongoing San Isidro movement, which was sparked by laws passed by the Cuban government very recently in 2019 to further censor the population, which has rightfully so caused much outrage by the country's population, as they are losing their freedom of speech. Although Cuba is physically separated from continental Latin America, it still shares a lot of the struggles that these countries face. For example, both Cuba and Venezuela are undergoing severe economic issues, which are greatly impacting the well-being of the country. Furthermore, the ongoing Black Lives Matter movement has spread worldwide, and this important issue has had a major following in many Latin American countries aside from Cuba, such as Brazil and Colombia. This course has helped me become more of a global citizen, developing a deeper understanding for countries other than my own. I would have never known how much the people of Cuba were suffering due to the economic and political corruption that they have undergone. Furthermore, although I started this semester planning on being an international studies major, I found that this major was not right for me. But I am very happy I took this class because I learned more about myself and the world around me. I encourage you to read up on the history, culture, and current events ongoing in Cuba, especially the current San Isidro movement, as the government is trying to take away the freedom of speech from many Cuban citizens. How do you think Cuba's economy will hold up with the pandemic? The country has had severe economic issues in the past and present. Do you think these will be amplified by the coronavirus? How do you think this will affect the emigration rates? How long do you think it will take the country to recover from the further economic losses they have endured due to COVID-19? Have an amazing winter break, stay safe, and go Gators!